His life includes stints as a theater director in San Francisco, Pittsburgh, and D.C., teaching music and physics, working as a physician's assistant, a Unitarian minister, social activist, cellist, and most recently, a novelist. Marc Estrin is my guest next on Profile. Marc Estrin hopped from pre-med to science studies to a master's in theater arts at UCLA, which landed him several theater directorships around the country. In 1969, Goddard College recruited him to teach math, physics, and English. He's performed with bread and puppet theater over 30 years. He has also worked as a physician's assistant, director of the Peace and Justice Center, and a Unitarian minister. Estrin started writing novels later in life, for which he has garnered national acclaim. He plays cello for the Vermont Philharmonic and a number of other orchestras in Vermont. He sings for the Vermont Symphony Chorus, Oriana, and the Burlington Choral Society. Estrin has 2 children, 5 grandchildren, and lives with his wife in Burlington. It's great to have you here.
Hey.
So you're pre-med in college, but you were told by your professors or something that being a doctor you were too smart to be a doctor, and sure enough you are the recipient of a Rockefeller Institute fellowship, an incredible honor, where it's a doctoral program in microbiology, and there's like a 1-to-1 ratio to Nobel Prize winners for the incoming class, something like that?
Well, there are only 40 incoming, there are only 40 students totally, 10,
right.
10 a year. And there were at the time 40 Nobel Prize winners on the faculty.
Incredible. What was that experience like, and why didn't it end up working out for you?
I think it had to do with not really understanding what I was getting into as far as advanced science went. My original career goals were to be a doctor and to help people. And then here I was in this institution that was focused on something entirely different. And there were no people, there were colleagues, but what do you do with this stuff? You know, if you're going to, well, at the time that I was there, it was really the breakthrough time for DNA analysis, and in fact, they discovered RNA, the functions of RNA in the lab I was working in. So, you know, it certainly has application. Personally, what would I be doing? It just felt lonely, and it felt too elitist to me.
So you leave this very heady community and you go to UCLA to get a master's degree in theater. Why theater?
I was thumbing through the UCLA catalog, and I'd never been to a show. We could never afford to go to shows, right? But I thought, that sounds interesting, and it was as trivial as that.
Fantastic. So you get out of that, and you're a theater director all over the place in San Francisco, Pittsburgh. You wrote and performed agitational theater in D.C. You're also doing some agitational theater in San Francisco. You also, when you come here, you connect with Peter Schumann and Bread and Puppet Theater while you're teaching at Goddard. And Bread and Puppet certainly continues to be a part of your life. You wrote the text for this wonderful Rehearse with Gods book that lovely, Rehearse with Gods. What significant ideas, experiences, or values did theater bring to your life? Or has it brought to your life?
Well, it is basically what we do in the world. That is, we perform. Whether we're performing as couch potatoes or performing as George Bush or as Peter Schumann. So the question of what show are we in is very, very important. What I did in Washington and somewhat in San Francisco was not what you called agitational theater, but infiltrative theater. And the reason was that one of the great theoretical problems of theater is that you have an audience and they pay money and they get a ticket and they come and they sit down and they go like this, they watch a show, they go home. And the quality of their experience is marginal compared to the experience of Hamlet, the experience of King Lear, the experience of, Mother Courage. How can you bring the audience experience closer to what's being put on stage? And that was what I was trying to solve. And the idea was to get rid of the audience, get rid of audience.
And have them have a real experience.
Have them have a real experience. And so we planned I put a troupe together, and we planned a whole lot of events where the audience never knew it was a theater piece. It was just something odd and strange and amazing and thought-provoking that happened that day, right? And then you didn't have that kind of aesthetic separation. You just had an event which tried to extend people's experience in the world, to make them think a little more carefully about what was going on. So that infiltrative theater was, I think, pretty important. Peter obviously doesn't do that. Peter's the other end of that. Nobody thinks that the puppets are real life, right? But that's amazing, too, what goes on at Bread and Puppet, because of the interaction with the creation of a culture around this subculture. And obviously the themes that he works with are enormous and deeply felt, and the puppets are so expressive. So yeah, I mean, it's two opposite ends of things. One that looks like theater very much, and one that doesn't at all.
Right. And they both work on their own, certainly on their own
And they both bring
levels.
enormous adrenaline to the audience.
Right. So backing up only just a little bit, but why you came to Vermont. In 1969, you're recruited by actually a student search committee to come to Goddard. And indeed, you move up not only yourself, but with kind of a commune of folks and pets and stuff. Why was Goddard a good fit for you?
At the time, Jerry Witherspoon was the new president of Goddard, the first to take over since Tim Pitkin invented the school. Since then, they've had many presidents. But he was essentially the revolution at Goddard, the next step. And I didn't know much about Goddard, but I came up. Jerry flew me up. I landed at the Barrie Airport, and I'd never been in the country, first of all. And he picks me up in the car, and we drive to Plainfield, Vermont, and it was June. And we're driving on these dirt roads with trees. I was knocked out. Los Angeles was the biggest country I'd ever lived in, rural. And so, first of all, the setting was bouleversant. Do we have a word?
Right.
Bowling over.
Right. Because you were brought up in New York
Bronx,
City, but in the Bronx, not even Manhattan
was. Of the Bronx. That's where we
exotic,
played.
right.
In cellars, between cars, stickball on the streets, et cetera, et cetera. I knew tree, cat, dog, robin. I mean, not a lot. And I still only know that. Jerry is a guy who likes to sit with a legal-size yellow pad and write things. And we sat up all night, and what he said to me was, look, this is a key point in history. We have no history. We want to make a new world. We want to make Goddard into a new world. Well, what a sucker line, huh? I mean, how could I say no? I just went back to Washington, where we were, and said, okay, we're moving. And after some discussion, everybody says, great, let's get in the cars and go on up.
And you teach just about everything there.
Well, there were no, at the time, there were no departments. I guess there still are no departments. And you taught what I took that as an invitation to teach what I wanted to learn. And, certainly had a wide background, so I wasn't starting from scratch teaching physics or math or whatever, the stuff that I got into.
But so you were there nearly 10 years, and it may be because you saw the writing on the wall. But you certainly were talked out of being a doctor, but something about that clearly was still part of your feeling what you needed, and you trained to become a physician's assistant, which you did. And I'm wondering how did that fit into your life? You worked mainly at health clinics in Vermont, certainly in Plainfield, and then up in Burlington also as an EMT.